Okay, so what was life like growing up here?
I think I went to my first go-go bar at 13.
Yeah.
So they allowed us to drink. And going to America, of course, people would say, where are you from? And I'd go, Thailand. They go, Texas. I go, no, Thailand, Taiwan. I go, not really. And they go, well, they're next to each other, right? And I go, well, actually, they're about as close as Texas and Ecuador.
How's it going, folks? Pete here from Thairish Times. How you doing? I was walking down the road the other day and I bumped into a subscriber and he said to me, Pete, what is it about these stories? Like, you're doing all this content, you're doing all these interviews. Like, what is it about these interviews that do it for you? And I kind of got thinking, like, what is it about these interviews? Like, why am I doing so many of them? It's kind of like a drug. What I mean by that is chasing a story. It's like a drug, you know? You get an idea or you get a lead and someone says, Pete, that would be a good interview for you to do, and then you get the concept in your head. If I was going to do an interview, what would I do? What would be the angle? Then you go and approach the person. All this type of stuff is kind of what I enjoy doing. It's chasing a story, right? And then you actually get to film it and then you put it online for people to watch. And that's the exciting part of doing these interviews. So anyway, I was at a comedy club a couple of weeks ago and this guy gets on the stage and straight away he bursts out into Thai, and his Thai sounded really good. And straight away I knew this guy has a story. His Thai is so good, because when you've been here a long time, you can hear the level of Thai, and this guy was like next level Thai language. And I was like, right, what's this guy's story? So as soon as he finished his set, I walked over, introduced myself. How's it going? Pete here from Thairish Times. Who are you? Like, what's your story, you know? And straight away the guy's a talker. Well, he's a comedian as well, so comedians, they can talk, you know, they're not scared of being in the limelight, you know. So he was a talker, man. He was just going. I was like, wow, this guy can talk. I asked him, would you do the interview? He said yes. So we did the interview and something happened, I don't really know, but my file got corrupted and I lost the whole interview. It's the only time it ever happened. So I was like, no way, like, I can't believe I lost this story. So I asked him again, I said, would you do the interview again? And he said, I'm not too sure, Pete. Maybe this is a sign that it's not gonna work out. But then he said, well, my mother has been in Thailand for 52 years. But her name is Beverly. How about interviewing her? And that's the interview I did last week. So now I'm gonna interview her son. He saw the interview with Beverly. He liked it. I asked him, would you do it again? At first he said, we'll do it in the middle of August. And I thought, oh, he's never gonna do it now. But he contacted me yesterday and he said, Pete, let's do it. I've reconsidered. I wanna do it with you. And here it is. So we're gonna talk to a guy who's grown up his whole life in Thailand, and we're gonna find out more about that, because that seems really interesting. And I'm rambling on again. Let's go straight into the interview. If you like the interview, I always say, give me a like, leave me a comment. It helps me out, helps the channel out. And if you can, please share the video with a friend, because that really does help me out as well. Cheers, let's do it. And I got this in one take. Wow. What a job, huh? Roland, how's it going?
It's going well.
Yeah, I want to say first when we start is, your mom is a fantastic woman. I really enjoyed interviewing your mom, so I'm looking forward to hear your story. This is part 2 because the first time the file got corrupted, so we're doing it again.
Yes, yes. Well, she is. I mean, I used to have people come up to me when I was a student, and you know, she taught sex education to 13-year-olds. And she taught them about all the boys and the birds and the bees and the pussies and condoms and you name it. They come up to me and go, your mother told us about masturbation today. And I'm like, thank you so much. Do you mind if I just have my lunch in peace, you know?
So, you're a funny guy. I met you at a comedy club. That's how we are doing this right now. So tell me, were you born in Thailand?
I wasn't born here, but as my mom mentioned, I came here at the age of 2. All of my memories are in Thailand. I don't have any memories from the United States.
So what was life like growing up here?
Well, you know, it was 50 years ago when I grew up. It was less developed than it is today. It was still a big city, and it was still millions of people. I mean, I used to take the bus home from school at 13, hanging off the side of the thing, and it was packed to overflowing. But the thing about Thailand that, you know, people are struck by is how friendly everyone is. And that has never changed.
So where did you live when you were a kid?
So the funny thing is I've always been on Sukhumvit. I'm like a Sukhumvit boy. We started on Sukhumvit Soi 1, then we went to Sukhumvit Soi 5, where my dad has his office, and then we moved to Sukhumvit 53, and then eventually 55, and Ekamai is where I ended up for 20 years of my marriage.
When you were a little kid growing up, your first couple of years, what kind of house did you live in? Or did you live in a house?
No, we always lived in a house. My mother insisted to have a house with a garden, and if possible, with a pond, because she liked fish. And she'd bring her little classes there, and they'd pick up little, you know, samples of the water, and they'd check it for bugs and whatever else they could find. So we lived well. I mean, in those days as well, you know, you'd have a maid just by giving her accommodation and some rice.
Like a nanny?
And a nanny, yes.
So what was it like having a nanny in your house?
Well, you know, I mean, I do a joke in comedy that goes like this, where, you know, before I went to college, I had never, you know, washed a dish, made my bed, or tickled my own balls. That's the job of the nanny, right? Which is not quite true, but you want to keep a baby boy quiet, it doesn't hurt, right? So I've been very privileged, and I've always felt privileged that really the maids which come from up country bring with them their folk wisdom, their funny, you know, animalistic beliefs, or whatever it is. They come fully formed with all of their thoughts of life, of course, as we all do from a young age.
And do they impart Thai culture on you? Of
course, you know, you know, all the things you're supposed to do. Of course I was taught. Whether or not I followed them is something else.
You're obviously fluent in Thai.
Pretty good. I wouldn't say fluent.
You can hold a conversation.
Oh yes, like I'm beyond that. But if you get into little niches of politics or economics, I don't have the words and the vocabulary for that.
Your childhood in Bangkok, right? What was it like? Did you have a good childhood?
Oh yes.
Were you playing sports? What were you doing as a kid?
I was very active. I loved it. I mean, every day after school, I usually did a martial art. I used to do martial arts or dance. Because my sister, I was dragged in, my mother was very liberal. They went to Berkeley, California, and she wanted to raise us independent of sexuality, if possible. So my sister wanted to go into dance. She said, you should go do dance. And if I did martial arts, my sister should do martial arts. So we had this kind of funny crossover. And of course, it served me later in life. Little did I know that dance is apparently enjoyed by many women around the world. So it didn't hurt for me to get into dance at an early age. And yeah, Thailand is a fantastic place to grow up in. You are coddled. I mean, if you come here with, as an example, when I had a child, you lose the baby within 30 seconds because someone wants to hold it. And they'll pass it around, and you can have your coffee without worrying as your baby floats around from a number of hands. And it's fantastic for the child too. Can you imagine? It's like the simulation of a cat with many people. The cat then can have other people come into the house without freaking out. But if the cat's not exposed to other people, the rest of his life, it is fearful.
Thailand, right, everyone knows it's got a nightlife scene. Now, I can just picture myself as when I was a teenager in Dublin, right?
Yeah.
You kind of have a beer, your friends would call around. We used to go around to my friend's house. We would have been about 16, and we'd have a couple of beers, and we'd be kind of nervous. We'd go home then, and oh God, I hope my parents don't know I've had a couple of beers, you know? And that was kind of our thing. But I know if my group of friends were put in Bangkok at 16 years old, I'm sure we would have been...
Try 13. I think I went to my first go-go bar at 13 because they allowed us to drink. You know,
really?
My first taste of beer, which is terrible, of course. But yes, I mean, you know, here, the go-go bars were number one, the cheaper place, and two, they didn't care. They let you in, whereas hotels and other places, eventually, the ID card came in way, way later. When I grew up, there was no IDs. I went to an international school, so you got to remember, I was in a little bubble, separated. Yes, there's kids from maybe 60 other countries, but we're all international kids. My best friend was Wushik, you know, from Korea, and I had Indian friends, and, you know, they're all mixed. So when we go out, it was to hang out with each other. Like every teenager wants to hang out with other teens. You know, a year old or maybe. A year younger, forget it. No one wants to be seen with them, you know?
So you're in that little expat bubble.
At the time, the Thai government did not allow Thai children to attend international schools.
Why not?
You had to be the son of a diplomat or whatever. I'm not sure why. I think part of it was control. So the very wealthy Thais, as my mom mentioned, sent their children abroad rather than put them into Thai public schools. Now, of course, it's opened up. So when I went to school, there was like 3 international schools in Bangkok. Now that there were over 200, last I checked.
Have you ever gone back and lived in the West?
Only briefly. I went back for university for 5 years, and then 2 years after that in San Francisco, and 1 year in New York when I was courting my ex-wife, and that's it.
What was it like when you went back? Did you have a massive culture shock?
Of course. I mean, for me, I would consider myself first and foremost an international, you know, third culture child. So I'm pretty comfortable almost anywhere, and I enjoy the differences. I'm not scared of them. And going to America, of course, people would say, where are you from? And I'd go, Thailand. They go, Texas. I go, no, Thailand, Taiwan. I go, not really. And they go, well, they're next to each other, right? And I go, well, actually, they're about as close as Texas and Ecuador. And if you know Americans, they're like, where's Ecuador? You know. So yeah, it was definitely a cultural shock. And I really enjoyed it. I lived 5 miles from the beach. I went to UC Irvine. I love the water. I went down. There's a whole California culture, which they have. And it was great. It was so funny for me to meet. I'd meet like a Vietnamese boat person, literally, who had come over on a boat and, you know, forced himself into mathematics so he could attend university. Didn't speak English very well. And I'd be like, so how many years have you been here? And he goes, oh, I've been here 12 years. And I'm like, well, that's longer than me.
How long did you spend there? You said 6 years?
7 years total.
7 years. And then why did you come back to Thailand?
That was just, I would say it almost accidental, where I had, I do want to say it, but let's say love gone wrong, you know, a relationship. I took a break, came back to Thailand for a visit with my parents, and I ended up getting a job. I had read a book on the shelf called Ogilvy on Advertising, and it sounded like a fun profession, so I applied just for fun. And of course I had no experience, so I just lied. And I said, well, pay me if you like it. If you don't, sorry, you know, no worries. And I ended up getting some jobs. And then from that, I built a real portfolio. And then I got fired, and I started my own company at 25.
In advertising?
Yes, and I haven't stopped since.
So this would have been, what, the 90s?
95, 96, first company.
Okay, and so how was that? How was your first company over here?
You know what's funny is, as you know, my parents, my whole family's academic, and I'm not. And I always thought, I don't know, I guess, to me, business is one of the clearest, most black and white elements there is in our society. It really is as simple as you buy it for $1, you sell it for $1.20, good. Sell it for 80 cents, no good, lose money, you know? And that's it, and everyone complicates it. But at its core, it's very simple. So I rented a desk for 2,500 baht in someone else's office. They shared the phone line, and that's how I started.
And did you build it up to a big company?
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty good. After a while in advertising, I decided the best customers were the ones who made money while they slept. They had a product, so I decided I want to make a product, and all I could afford at the time was one simple printing of 2,000 products on a sheet of paper, 24 by 36 inches, this is the size of the plate, and I decided to do a map. And the map took off, and it was fun for a while. It was called Groovy Map. And it told you where to go to have fun. Fun mapped out. And we ended up going into 27 different cities. And it was a very good business.
And I imagine the digital revolution has changed that business some way?
That killed everyone. You know, Google, in fact, 2 things happened. In 2008, Nokia spent $8.4 billion, which is about 2 years of their earnings, on a map company called Navtech to offer this digital navigation which everyone uses. But they were hoping to charge a fee. You know, for a quarter you'd pay a certain amount. Google, meanwhile, buys the other biggest companies in the world, lose hundreds of millions a year, and give it for free. So myself and every other map maker went out of business within, say, 6 months.
And what did you do then?
Not 6 months, a few years. Then I decided, what could I do? And I scrambled because I had 30 staff and huge bills and overheads. And we moved into, we ended up in souvenirs, which was a great thing up until the moment where COVID closed all airports simultaneously around the world, and I had to let everyone go.
And what are you doing now?
Trying to build it back.
And how's it going?
It's going all right. I mean, we have good products, and customers are interested in souvenirs again. But I had a 2-year, 3-month period of no sales. And I can tell you, during that period, it was most frustrating, horrible, and depressing.
So, are you married?
At the moment, no. I was married for 22 years, and mutually, we decided to divorce.
To a Thai woman?
Thai-American lawyer.
Okay.
Jewish New Yorker.
Okay.
Tough as they come.
Sounds tough.
She graduated summa cum laude from university at 16.
Wow.
So, yes, I've been surrounded by very intelligent women and kind of wonder if maybe I should just take a break.
So, how could you compare, like, Thailand to the West?
The biggest difference, I think, without a doubt, and which everyone recognizes very quickly, is how wonderfully warm and friendly the Thai people are. And this is not taught. I think it's genuine. You go up country, you go anywhere, the Thais are amongst the most relaxed and friendly people they are. I mean, the whole concept of sanuk, fun, is pervasive in their culture. You know, the whole "mai pen lai, mai tong yung," you know, chill out, dude, relax, is part of it. Because in fact, for them, anger is only expressed by children or by adults who haven't learned how to behave properly. So it's so different when you consider the West, where they have all these, you know, UFC fighting and you name it, whatever else. You know, the road rage, you don't really hear much about it. You know, shootings, none. You know, theft. It's a beautiful country to live, and I think that's where people come and they see the buildings not paid, you know, and the sidewalk is crap and this and that, and they get hung up on the physical accoutrements of what they're used to. But they forget, what is society about? Society is about people. And if you don't like other people and they don't like you and you're not comfortable, you're never going to be comfortable. And that's what makes Thailand so unique, is you feel comfortable very quickly.
Are you here for the long haul?
Yes. I've been very fortunate to travel a lot. Like I said, I made 27 city maps, so I used to be on the plane every week. And I've been to many, many countries, over 30 at least, maybe 40 or 50 now. And I still keep coming back. I'm thinking, this is a great spot. It's a great spot.
Are you a Thai citizen?
Yes, I am now. I'm actually naturalized, so I had to apply like everyone else, get into the immigration lines, and go through the paperwork. And it took me 17 years. And I finally get this piece of paper, this huge parchment with 16 stamps and wax seals, and I pick it up and I'm so excited, and the woman says, "You were very quick." I go, "What do you mean quick?" She goes, 17 years, that's quick. And I said, "Well, you know, we want the nation to patana, which means move forward and develop." I go, right? I said, I make a joke, I go, "Maybe you think quick could be 15 years, maybe, or eventually, maybe 10. And she looks at me and her face just drops and she goes, "Are you criticizing this country? Give me that paper." I go, no. They've been like, you know.
What was the process? Did you have to do like a test in Thai or something?
Yeah, there's a number of processes, but the main thing is it's very straightforward. You need 3 years, same work permit, same location. Now again, this is what I did. I'm not sure it's still that way. Then you need to apply for your residency permit, and you must hold that a minimum of 5 years. No mistakes. And at that point, if I had made one mistake, it's invalidated, and you must start again.
Oh.
My father was here for 40 years. He missed it by 1 day, and I verified this by going out and fighting with the head of immigration, and that was it. And I said, how ridiculous is that? I go, you know, tourists, they lose their passport, their visas, you have overstay of 200 baht a day or 500 baht a day. Why wouldn't you do the same with a resident?
What was your reply?
This is Thailand, you know, whatever. It's changed now. I've gone out and found out they have since you can now have a deficit and pay a penalty.
A lot of people asked about your dad.
Yes.
You know, is he still around?
No, my father sadly passed away 3 years ago. But he was the reason we came. You know, he got a job, 2 job offers. One was Minnesota, negative 30 degrees Celsius that I heard, right? And the other one was Thailand. Said, that's it, let's go. So they came and they stayed. They did think about might leave. And of course, neither of them ever did.
Did your dad really love Thailand?
Yes, he said he was very fortunate. Had it been the Philippines perhaps, or Korea or Japan, they probably wouldn't have stayed 50 years. It's different.
Do you feel accepted by Thai society?
That's a very good question. I would say it's been difficult because a lot of the culture is about, how do I say it? Let's just say if you're, I don't want to use the word peasant, but I would say so poor that you are looking to escape at any level, then money becomes your primary driving factor. And your relationships are built around what I would say would be transactional relationships. But because I'm relatively independently wealthy, I don't need anyone. And then it comes into where my friends would be on an intellectual basis or on an activity basis. So the things I've chosen are things that most Thais don't like. Motorcycling outdoors where it's hot, sailing in the hot sun, with warm water and all that, So my activities themselves are not really a strong activity. I don't go out drinking and partying like I used to. So I'm sad to say that the Thai friends I have made kind of drift away if there's not a reason to stay connected.
How do Thai people react when you start speaking Thai? Because downstairs, I saw you talking to the security guard and you're just fluent Thai, talking to him. But you are a Westerner. I mean, you are Farang, right? And when you walk on the street and you go into a market, everyone just assumes foreigner. Then you start speaking Thai, and the sound of your Thai sounds very native.
That's the funny part. Because I was raised by maids from upcountry, my accent would actually be upcountry. So you have to understand, if it was English, for instance, in New York, it'd be like, hey man, what's going on, baby? It is a much more rural accent, so they hear it. And then the way I talk, it's much more informal.
So what's the process of when the second you open your mouth and you speak Thai? How do they react?
They're surprised. Like I have a joke in Thai, which I say, "Na man falang nan eng," which means my face looks white. That's all. My face is foreign. That's all. But I am a Thai. And so once the conversation passes, and they say, "How long you been here?" and I tell them forever. And they go, "No, how long you been here?" And I go, "Forever, since I was a kid." They go, "Really? Since you're a kid?" I said, "Yes." They go, "That's why you speak Thai?" I go, "Yes, maybe." And the Thais again are fun. If you make someone laugh, you immediately make them relax. It works in English. And here especially, they love to play. The Thais,
they do. They're kind of silly in a way. It's banter. It's just so ingrained in the culture. If you make Thai people smile, they instantly warm up to you.
Yeah, I remember talking to, I shouldn't say who, let's just say a member of the U.S. Embassy. And I was insulted when he said, to me, this is a nation of children. And I said, what do you mean by that? I mean, that's insulting. But what he was trying to say is everyone is so playful. They've kept that kernel of play it is natural for children. I mean, who doesn't want to play? This is something that keeps you young. This is something that keeps you alive. And I think that is fundamentally what makes this country so great, is it really is in between. Things work. Not perfectly, but they work. You have running water, you have electricity, you have everything going well. You have taxes, you have stuff. But you don't have this overriding, feeling of fear, of being arrested, of crime, of all the other things that could be there, which aren't. So to me, Thailand is that perfect balance. It's somehow maintained this perfect balance between personal freedoms and societal expectation. Just in between.
Do you have any Thai friends?
It's a good question. And I would say, because of my exposure, I found that friendships occur on several bases. One is transactional, one is entertainment value, and one is a pinongkan, entertainment. For me, the most honest people and the ones I relate to the most are really the working class Thais. The ones from upcountry, the ones that came in, the farmers' daughters, the farmers' sons. These people are honest, they're forthright, they're like me, they're upfront, and that's the people I relate to. I'm lucky to live in a small neighborhood, and I sometimes go out and share a whiskey with the guys after work, and we sit, and their world is so alien to me, as alien as my world is to them.
And what kind of questions do they ask you?
Well, the usual ones, but also for them it's about, it really is about, for them, there's so much related to income and money and fear about money. So like the other day I was just there and I was getting totally drunk and I said, oh, I used to live right there before when business was good. I had an apartment I rented, and they go, how much did you pay? And I go, oh, I think I paid this much. I told the guy, and he just kept repeating it. What? You pay this much to rent? You pay this much to rent? You pay this much to rent? I'm like, calm down, calm down. And after we're all done, we all say goodbye, he gets on his bicycle and rides home. And I realize, oh my God, we're sitting there. He only owns a bicycle. So of course it's ridiculous. What I was paying in rent was more than he'd ever earn.
How do you find the salaries here for Thai people? Is there because there does seem to be a massive gap between the wealthy, the have and the have-nots.
It's unfair. It's based on education, right? You'd say the same thing in the West. If you were able to, you had graduated high school, or you graduated with a degree in IT and engineering, you're going to be paid much higher. And unfortunately, if you don't speak English, you can't really advance yourself very well on the internet because all you have left is what's in your native language. So the first thing that Thailand really has to do to close the wealth gap is improve the education of the average person.
Do you think that is possible given the quality of public education?
It will take a new administration to recognize the value of taking some money from other things that may not have the same value and put them into education. I mean, to me, even the United States does not put enough into education. They're paying the civil service, I believe, 8 times more, like 40% of all the taxes collected versus 5%, I believe, that's going towards education.
Now that you're a single man, are you dating anyone?
I am, but it turns out she's Singaporean.
Singaporean?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
What's she doing over here?
Let's just say she's just enjoying her life here.
Oh, so she's probably got some money stashed away somewhere.
Perhaps, yes.
So how long have you been dating this Singaporean lady?
3 years through COVID.
Oh, 3 years?
Yes.
So are you a girlfriend, boyfriend? Are you an item?
Yes, I would say that's pretty much true, although I get dropped every few weeks, but that's just her.
Well, say no more, you're going to get in trouble.
Yes, thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah. Thanks very much, you're a legend, and I really appreciate you doing the interview, and also tell your mother that she's a fantastic woman. She's probably watching right now. Beverly, thanks very much for doing the interview, and folks, if you like this interview, hit the like button, share the video, leave us a comment, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.
Sawadee krap.
Sawadee krap.